Today I'm going to be talking about Orrin Porter Rockwell. The title is The Man Behind the Myth. This relates to Unit 9 and also the expulsion of the Saints from Missouri. Okay, this is the esoteric doctrine in the sense that a lot of the miracles that surrounded Orrin Porter Rockwell's life are not well understood or documented. And so there's not clear proof that these actually occurred. But there are concepts from his life that we can apply into our own lives. So I tried to take out the certain concepts, which will then lead us to this call to action at the end. These are my academic sources. I referred to 2 books, and also there's 2 church sources. Go ahead and look at these if you're interested in that. Okay, who is Orrin Porter Rockwell? Orrin Porter Rockwell was a friend of Joseph Smith, referred to as the destroying angel or the modern day Samson. In fact, he received a blessing from Joseph Smith that read the following. He said, I prophesy in the name of the Lord, you, Orrin Porter Rockwell, so long as you shall remain loyal and true to thy faith, need fear no enemy. Cut not thy hair, and no bullet or blade can harm thee. So the same blessing offered to Samson was also offered to this man. It's pretty incredible. And to get to this point, there's a lot of events that occurred. And so I'm going to be talking about how Orrin came to this point. And then after that, there's legends about what he was able to accomplish. But as it relates to the church and also the expulsion from Missouri, I'm going to focus on those concepts. Orrin Porter Rockwell grew up with Joseph Smith. In fact, when his Joseph Smith Sr. moved to Palmyra, so did the father of Orrin. And Joseph Smith and Orrin became friends. And also there are evidences that they shared information regarding the church because he was one of the first members, and also later followed Joseph Smith in the church throughout the rest of his life. So Orrin Porter Rockwell, there's not a lot of evidence of him in Kirtland, but there is quite a bit of stories from him in Missouri. There he was ordained a deacon. He also joined the Danites. He also made specific promises within the church, and I think those promises played a pivotal role in how this man developed. So that brings me to first concept. A life of principle will provide guidance amidst life's obstacles. There was no other man that maybe saw more tribulation than Orrin Porter Rockwell. John C. Bennett, we're just going to fast forward to the Nauvoo times. He was a former friend of Joseph Smith, but later became disavowed and antagonistic because because of certain events that happened in Nauvoo. He actually blamed the murder of Governor Boggs later after the Saints had left Missouri on Joseph Smith, because Joseph Smith had prophesied the death of Governor Boggs. He felt that Orrin Porter Rockwell had gone to fulfill that prophecy. So there's actually evidence of Orrin confronting John C. Bennett in his home, and that's a really interesting conversation. From there, the principle I want to talk about is how we can live a life of principle, or according to promises or covenants, as we say in the church, and it'll provide guidance. The other idea that I want to talk about is loyalty between individuals will always have its reward, as evidence between Rockwell's commitment to covenants and to his peers. With the event that was regarding the death of Governor Boggs, Joseph Smith fled across the Mississippi River to avoid persecution, and also they had sent officers after him. And Porter Rockwell went to Philadelphia. There in Philadelphia, he eventually returned after things he felt had calmed down, but was captured. He was driven and then eventually thrown in jail. His sentence in jail was terrible. It was awful. He, because he had such a he was well known, had a big reputation. They chained at one point his wrists to opposite ankles, so that way he could barely move. Couldn't even stand up. It was interesting because he experienced this prison experience where months earlier Joseph Smith had been in Liberty, and when Joseph Smith was in Liberty, Orrin Porter Rockwell actually sent in equipment for them to try to escape with, which was interesting because he later would be in prison in St. Louis and then transferred to the same Liberty jail for a few days to await trial. But while he was there, he did try to make several escape attempts. And so one of the escape attempts was an inmate was put in the same prison as he was. And he still had some of his possessions, and Orrin Porter Rockwell was able to cut through the chains. And when the guard came to give them their food, they both dashed out of the jail and threw the guard inside the prison. and then locked the door on him. Then they ran outside. There was a big 12-foot fence. Oren was able to jump over it, but the inmate, the other friend, wasn't able to make it. So Oren turns around, grabs from the top of the fence, grabs this man by the collar and pulls him up. There, as he began running, the other police officers or the sheriff ran him down. And he said that if he hadn't turned back, he would have been able to escape. But Oren was a man of integrity, a man of principle. Just as he was loyal to that inmate, he was also loyal to Joseph Smith. While he was then sentenced to prison, the charges regarding Governor Boggs were eventually dropped. But because he had tried to escape, they kept him in prison for an escape attempt. So Joseph Smith had this prophecy. This is from the Joseph Smith papers that prophesied in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ that Orrin Porter Rock will get away from the Missourians. And he actually did. With the help of Joseph Smith and also of his mother, he was eventually released from his obligation in jail after 9 months that were excruciating. But because he was faithful to his promises, he was able to receive this release. This finally leads me to the last two sections. I want to reference these two sections, verse from the D&C. It reads that he may know that faithfulness is stronger than the cords of death. Orrin Porter Rockwell exemplified that to the other inmates, but also to Joseph Smith. And also that it says, therefore, hold on thy way, and for the priesthood shall remain with thee. For their bounds are set, they cannot pass. Their days are known, and the years shall not be numbered less. Therefore, fear not what man can do, for God shall be with you forever and ever. That was both verses from Liberty Jail, which Orrin Porter Rockwell played a part in. And also later, a couple months later, he was in his own jail experience. And I'm sure these maybe ideas came to mind with his close connection to Joseph Smith, that he knew he had to be faithful to his friends and also to trust in the Lord. I would say integrity, like Orrin Porter Rockwell showed, to covenants, but also to being fully committed, was the source of his strength. And for the rest of his life, he would receive blessings because of this integrity. So I invite you to illustrate the same amount of integrity to covenants as Porter Rockwell showed.